All right, time to talk a little football. Howard Balzer joins us now. Howard, of course, the conversation's been quite a bit over the last few days. It's the receiver room with Hollywood Brown and Greg Dortch and Rondale Moore and the rookie Michael Wilson. I can go on and on. This is a pretty compelling wide receiver room, isn't it? I mean, this has got all the makings of all-pro status and playoffs and Super Bowl. I mean, your number one's Hollywood Brown, huh?
Well, my biggest disappointment or, concern right now is when you think about some of these guys playing another 5 to 7 years, or who knows, maybe even longer, and then having a 5-year wait for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I might not be a voter anymore because I might have aged out. And so, yeah, I mean, it's, I know we're all being facetious here, but the reality is there's some talented guys there. You mentioned those three. Dort certainly showed well last year. Rondale Moore, if he can ever stay healthy. Marquise Brown certainly has the speed and the ability. But you look at those three. You have to look at those three guys and say they're the leaders right now, at least in terms of the top three guys, just by basis by what they did last year, and they're all 5'9" or shorter. I mean, Dortch and Moore are 5'7", and so we're not exactly talking about a lot of height in that receiver room. So I think it'll be important for someone like the draft pick Michael Wilson, who's 6'1" or 6'2", Zach Pascal, who they signed, has been with the Eagles and has been bounced around the league a little bit. He's got some size. Some other free agents that they've signed to add to the roster have some better size, but that's obviously not big targets for whoever the quarterback is. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how those guys do. I mean, I don't foresee much being added to any spot on the roster going into training camp. I mean, there could be some guys here and there, but certainly nothing of significance. So for the most part, the guys that are here now are the ones that are going to have to get it done.
And I think maybe the unfortunate part is having to play, if you have to play a rookie in Michael Wilson, I know he's a third-round pick, he's a rookie, still a rookie, so the dependence on Zach Ertz when he's healthy and Trey McBride, you got to remember that the tight end combination there as well, too. All that being said, but you got to remember Wilson's a rookie to get back and be thrown into the fray early on if he has to be.
Oh, you're 100% right about that. And so I don't know that they'll be counting on him for a large role at the beginning, but depending on how they play the offense and in multiple receiver sets, he could be a guy that at least could contribute some, and that'll be what's interesting to see. You raise a good point with mentioning Ertz and McBride. Of course, we don't know when Ertz is going to be available.
Yeah.
All anybody asks about and is concerned about is Kyler Murray coming back. From the ACL, but Ertz had one too, which was only suffered about a month earlier than Murray's, and so who knows when he'll be available. But you certainly hope that McBride is able to take a nice jump in year two as he really gets comfortable with this new offense, and so he becomes your if he's the one out there and Ertz isn't quite ready at the beginning of the season, then McBride becomes the bigger option of all the guys in terms of having some guys with size that you can get the ball to in tight quarters and potentially the red zone if they ever reach the red zone.
Very good. Very good.
Very good point.
Rondale Moore is good. Rondale Moore, going into his third year, very underachieved, I feel, as a receiver because of injuries for whatever reason.
He's banged up.
So is this one of those make-or-break years for this young man that he's got to play a full season or close to a full season to actually show his worth with the high pick that he was a couple years ago?
Yeah, no, I think that's 100% right. I mean, as everyone always says, the old cliche, the most important ability is availability. And, last year, of course, with the departure of Christian Kirk, they were counting on Rondale Moore to have a big role in that offense with Kirk gone. And they were planning for that all summer. And then Moore gets injured in practice, in the Thursday practice before the season opener. And then he misses a few games there, comes back, and then it takes a little bit of while for him to get his legs under him, and they were throwing all this little short stuff to him. But then after a couple, 3 games, he was getting down the field and making some plays. And then he got hurt again. And they're all soft tissue injuries that he suffered. And he had that problem in college. And so that's the big question, the big question with him. And so, if he goes through another injury-marred season, then you would think that's going to be a guy that, the team has questions about, going forward. And, Greg Dortch, I mean, what the heck? I mean, he had a couple of small injuries, but he didn't miss time, and he's a grinder and he's a battler. And so, he ended up being a nice fill-in guy there, but he doesn't have the pure speed and quickness that Rondale Moore has. So I don't think there's any doubt they need him to be available, and so that this is a key season for him, no question.
Howard, how do you sell this to the fans? Do you tell them we're tanking and we know it so that we'll be better in 2 years? We're going to do the Houston Astro logic here.
Well, you're certainly – no team comes out and says that, and obviously that's not a good look. I think we all have eyes, and we all can see, and we can see what has happened with this team. I mean, there's still a decent foundation of talent when you talk about, James Conner and on defense with, Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker will be there. There doesn't seem to be any real question about that. So there are some good players on this team, but enough to truly compete. But I don't think, though, that they're looking at it like where everyone says, oh, man, they just want to tank to get the number one pick next year. Well, I don't know that you go ahead and, you go about it, and do that, because you're still trying to win football games. But it's hard for me to imagine that this team is going to be good enough to win, much more than they did last year. And last year, the 4 wins landed them, the third pick, third overall choice, in the draft. So I think it's not a question of what you say to the fans. It's a question of what you do. And we can see, what they've done. That's clear. There's all this ridiculousness perpetrated by Pro Football Talk that the Cardinals taking all the cap hit this year for DeAndre Hopkins is proof that they're tanking, because now they could have had another, $10.5 million to spend if some veteran comes loose in August. Well, they still have $24 million under the cap, even with the way they handled it with Hopkins. And they're not going to spend that money. And they haven't spent it for the last 2 months. So why anyone would try to make a case that this proves if you want to make a case for tanking, like I said, all you have to do is look at the way they're putting this roster together. And so I think, they're signing competitive guys. They're signing guys that they know have good football character, but you also have the issue you don't even know when Kyler Murray is going to be available to play. So it could be a long, bleak season, but I think everyone understands that this is truly being built trying to be built for the future.
Howard, we know we get a lot of your time lately, so we appreciate you, man. Thanks so much. We'll have a good weekend.
No problem, guys. Anytime. Thanks.
Howard Balzer joining us. Make sure you check him out on GoPHNX as well as Twitter, HBalzer721.